A few months ago, we started doing an LS swap in this 1998 Chevy S10, which I have nicknamed the second gen Syclone. And today, we are going to be taking it on the very first test drive, which I'm super excited about. Now, the nickname for this project came not because it has a turbocharged V6 under the hood, because quite frankly, I just can't stand the sound of a GM turbo V6, but rather, it got its nickname because we took inspiration from the all-wheel drive powertrain that the Syclones and Typhoons used. So I figured if a turbo all-wheel drive V6 mini truck is fun, well, a supercharged V8 swapped all-wheel drive mini truck is going to be even more fun. It's going to be funner. I don't care if that's a word or not. It's going to be a blast. Like I said, today, the very first test drive is going to occur shortly, but first there are two very important things that we have to finish up. One, a cooling system, and two, I just need to build a quick air intake tube with a mass airflow sensor in it and then put a filter on there, and then we're going for a rip. So, status update. Underneath the hood, this is pretty much what we're left with. The engine is complete. We're just needing to fill that empty void right there. And this is what I have been waiting for a very long time. This is a custom radiator I picked up from Entropy. It's designed for LS swapped S10s, and it's also designed to fit underneath the core support, kind of in here, rather than in front of it where the stock radiators sat. And the reason that's important is because, well, one, the V8 takes up a lot more room than the V6, and two, we're gonna have another belt on the front of this engine at some point whenever we install the supercharger, so I need every last inch of space in here. So they built this radiator with these brackets here for the factory lower mounts in the core support, which is awesome because they're isolated in rubber. And up top, they just gave me these little 90-degree L brackets, but I drilled them out and I grabbed these from my scrap pile. They're from a factory 05 Silverado radiator. It's just a simple rubber isolator with a steel insert that kind of goes down there. And this is the factory Silverado bolt, slides in like that. And then I already went ahead and drilled the core support here, installed a threaded insert so the factory bolt can slide in just like it should, which makes my OCD very, very happy. So let's get started by putting the radiator in. We'll get the radiator hoses built because we got to do a little bit of custom stuff. Then we'll start welding on the intake tube, and then we're going for a drive. Now, I already have test fit this several times because I built those upper mounts, but it is so nice to finally have a radiator. Now, this is a custom one. It is somewhat expensive. In fact, it's really expensive. But the reason why I went with it is just because it's a much nicer finished product than what you normally get. I mean, on these swaps, a lot of guys will just end up chopping the core support. They'll put a Corvette radiator in sometimes, which nothing wrong with that. Sometimes they'll like chop the upper core support to get a radiator cap through there. And for me, I just didn't want to do that. I wanted something that fit. And it's pretty much factory. I mean, look, we got factory bolt, goes right in. And we have all the clearance in the world. So this is the fan package that comes with the radiator, and together they say this will cool 700 horsepower, which we will put to the test, because honestly, my goal is 800 horsepower, but close enough. Okay, so the cooling system is now 100% done, but I messed up and I left my cameras at the house, so I'll just use my cell phone to give you guys like the finished overview. But I think for the most part, you saw the important things go in. The Entropy radiator fits under the core support just like we wanted. We had to do a two-piece upper hose to get it where I wanted, but that actually leaves plenty of room. If you look down here, plenty of room for the 8-rib supercharger drive that'll eventually go in there. Also use these heat shrink hose clamps, which I've never tried before, but I really like them because they're low key, they don't take up a lot of space, and it looks cooler than a clamp. I just wish they didn't have those like white letters on there, but anyway. Steam vents in, the overflow plumbs to the radiator. The lower hose, I did get one of these swivel style thermostat outlets just because the stock one kind of points up and it would have put a major kink in the hose, in the lower hose. That way we can have a nice smooth transition in. Only thing I'm nervous about, those guys back there, because if you remember, to get that Trailblazer SS intake on, we had to get creative. So Now we can top the coolant off, or I guess add coolant, because there isn't a single drop in there right now. And then we can actually start it up and let it run, bring it up to operating temperature, and from there we'll just build the intake tube, and then we're going on a test drive. All right, so next day, coolant's topped off. We're just kind of going through our very first initial tuning cycle. So like right here, for example, we're logging short-term idle trim, so we get the idle airflow dialed in. Still haven't built the mass airflow sensor tube, but I just want to kind of get like the face baseline adjustments made, then we'll build the tube, then we'll go for that drive we've been talking about. All right, so definitely a tight fit under the hood, but this is more or less what the intake's gonna look like. I just got 3 simple elbows with some of those styrofoam plugs in the middle just to kind of mock things up here. Got one of those green filters. Yeah, technically I guess it's a hot air intake, but space is at a premium under the hood. So the only other bad thing is I do need to put a mass airflow meter in here somewhere, but there's not a really good straight shot to smooth the airflow out. So I think it'll probably end up living something like that, but we'll see. So anyway, we'll do some welding. We'll get this thing wrapped up. All right, first weld is done. And we're just gonna use the good old handy dandy vibrant bead roller just to put a little bump on the end so the filter doesn't fall off. Because that would be bad. All right, the next day we get the intake tube pretty much done, and I just decided to go ahead and paint it. Fairly simple setup. Had a little bracket here that mounts to the core support. The bung for the mass airflow sensor. Paint didn't turn out awesome. I did kind of rush it, but hey, looks half decent. So we'll get it in, we'll go for a drive. So as I am pulling out of the shop on our first test drive here, it occurs to me that we actually have 2 pretty big unknowns in this whole powertrain. A lot of it's been rebuilt. The engine, I went through the top end, so I have no idea what the bottom end's like, but I heard it run in the Silverado before we parted it out. The rear axle we went through, in fact, just before we started the engine swap. The front axle we went through, or the front differential, we went through very recently. But we have a transmission and a transfer case that I have no idea what their condition is like. The transmission came from the same blue parts truck that has now kind of made its way into the 4-wheel drive drag truck. And the transfer case I just bought off of like Facebook Marketplace probably a year and a half ago. And so I have no idea what the inside of both of those are like. So fingers crossed. So I got the data logger open. Basically, we're just trying to get the air-fuel mixture dialed in on this, get the VE table where it needs to be. Looks like it's trending a little bit on the rich side now, which is fine. I'd rather have it be rich than lean, but take a little while to get dialed in. So far, so good. I will say too, the brakes do work quite a bit better now. Part of the swap, we did the Hydro Boost conversion, and it takes like no pedal effort at all to stop, which is especially good considering this has a decent sized cam in it. I mean, it idles at 55 kPa, so Which, that's another discussion we need to have at some point, is KPA versus boost, because on Matt's video that I did with the spud truck, a lot of people were concerned that we're making like 25 pounds of boost. But the short version is the first 100 KPA is vacuum. We'll talk more about that later. A couple of funny pop noises I noticed there when I stepped on the throttle a little bit harder. Oh, and exhaust. This is the first time we've heard the exhaust actually in the truck under power. Pretty happy with it. It's definitely not too loud. I didn't want a too loud or too aggressive system. Has a nice rumble. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but there's a popping, and I can kind of feel it sort of in the front near my feet. So we're gonna check that out. I have a hunch. I think I know what it is. Okay, so you remember earlier how we said there was a couple of unknowns left in the powertrain? Well, unfortunately, our noise is one of those unknowns. We just got the truck up in the air. I just put it in gear and ran it a little bit, had Chris sit underneath and listen to it. And not the transmission, but our transfer case is making that horrendous popping and banging noise, which I kind of suspected, and I think it could be something as simple as like a stretched chain, but I don't know. I remember the last NV149 I had in the Copo truck. It did the same sort of noise before I rebuilt it, but it was only like on super hard launches, not just all the time, or partial throttle. When I rebuilt it, I put a brand new chain in that NV149, and it solved all the problems. So I'm hoping it's something similar. So my initial plan was just to stop the video right there, but we're gonna continue on because I have a backup plan. I did drive the S10 a little bit longer just to kind of continue to dial in the VE table, and I have the partial throttle areas pretty well ironed out to where I'm happy, but I can't go full throttle because this transfer case it makes a horrendous noise, and I don't want to risk doing any further damage. But I do have a backup plan because I remember that Coy, a local guy who I sold a dashboard to a few months ago, happened to have another NV149 for sale. So I reached out on Messenger, he still had it, and he even brought it down to the shop and delivered it. So thank you, Coy, so much, I appreciate it. And this is what we got. Basically the same exact thing, except this one is hopefully in much, much nicer shape. NV149, full-time all-wheel drive, literally the same exact thing. So we are going to put the truck up in the air. We're going to swap the cases out. I'm not going to even open this thing up. I'm not going to change the seals. It's just going to go in the condition that it is here. And then we'll have a second NV149 that we can either tear apart and maybe repair. We'll find out what's going on with it. Hopefully it's something simple. Worst case scenario, it's just extra parts. Best case, I have two NV149s for the inevitable next all-wheel drive project. But let's get this thing swapped out and let's get it back on the road. All right, front drive line. Gotta get out of the way. Now we're gonna drain the transfer case, pull the rear drive line, and see what we see. Well, certainly very dirty fluid for the short time it was in there, which was 5 miles. Quite a bit of metal in there. Okay, I'm getting soaked. All right, total time for removal, probably, honestly, an hour, which is not bad. Now just gotta get our clocking ring off. All right, so it's all put back together. It's now 2:27 in the afternoon. I did notice a tiny bit of fluid I drained out of the new transfer case. It was like super dirty and gross. Not metal, but just like really old. So I filled it up with some cheap fluid, just gonna run it for a minute or two, drain it out, put some good fluid in, and then we're hitting the road. All right, much better. All right, to say that I'm nervous is a little bit of an understatement. I just got fingers crossed. That is a huge relief. All right, guys, this is now day 3 of driving the S10, day 2 with the good transfer case. And I gotta say, now that we're getting the tuning a little bit further dialed in, this thing it's fun. It's not the fastest truck in the world, don't get me wrong. You know, my perspective is a little bit skewed, especially with the turbo big block that I get. But it's a lot of fun. It's fairly responsive. My initial tune-up had way low timing in it, so I'm getting that sorted out. Sorting through some shift scheduling, converter lockup scheduling, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Still got some bugs to work out, but we're getting there. So I think in the truck I mentioned that I'm having some weird issues going on with converter lock. And if you remember, this is a unknown transmission. It was out of a wrecked truck that I bought, and all I knew was that it would drive forward and backwards. We do have a brand new torque converter in here, and I don't want to hurt the clutch. So I got to figure out why it's not locking up. And this is kind of a good illustration of what's going on. If you look at this position right here, in D3 position, converter locked, it has basically 0 slip. So that's exactly what we want to see. But if we come on over here, when we shift into D4, see D4 position, 4th gear, converter applied, we're getting a fair amount of slip. And I've made sure that all the tuning is correct in terms of, you know, mile-an-hour thresholds where the converter should lock. And the other thing I noticed, it has a very, very lazy shift into 4th gear. So after a like 2-minute Google search, knowing almost nothing about the inside of how a transmission works, I've come to the conclusion that the converter clutch valve bore on this valve body from my basically junkyard transmission may be worn out. So I have the original 4L60 from the S10. I'm not just going to swap the whole trans in, but I'm just going to pop the pan, pull the valve body out, and basically swap the valve bodies, because I think, big asterisk there, I think the valve bodies are the same, but we will find out. All right, since the truck is still just a little bit warm, I'm just going to start by tearing this one down and removing the hopefully good valve body. There's the leak. I did drive this truck for probably 2,000 miles with this transmission in it. Never noticed any issues, so I'm just going to say I think it's good. Here's the check balls. Gasket. got traffic. And there's 1, 2. Now I am in drive 3. I think it locks up at about 50-ish. Uh-oh. I don't know if we made it better or worse, guys. So much traffic right now. Yeah, it should lock at 40 miles an hour in third gear, 55 miles an hour in... Wait a second. I think I have some apply and release tables messed up. Let me reflash and get back to you. So I might have just did the whole valve body thing for nothing. I believe my problem here is the release speed for the torque converter is higher than the apply speed, where the release speed should be lower. I don't know how I messed that one up, but I'm gonna fix it, and I think this is our entire problem, so stand by. I am man enough to admit when I am wrong, and that was majorly wrong, I think, on the transmission side of things. Just had my tune settings messed up. But there is one thing I'm hoping justifies my decision just a little bit, and that's the 3/4 shift, because before it was super sloppy. So I'm just going to bump it up to 4th. Not going quite fast enough. Come on, let's shift. Seems to shift into 4th a little bit better. So overall, I'd say we had a pretty successful first test drive week on the 2nd gen Syclone. And whenever you get a project that you're putting together, especially with used parts, you're gonna run into some bugs and some things that you need to iron out. But overall, I can't complain. The transfer case, that definitely had some major issues on the inside. I'm pretty sure it's a stretched chain, probably a couple of bad bearings, but at some point I'm gonna open that up for you guys and let you know what we find exactly. And if we got a good viable core, we'll rebuild it and put it on the shelf for later, because I promise I'll find some use for it. Transmission wise, or valve body anyway, 50-50 on that one, because one, the torque converter engagement issue was totally my fault. It was a dumb mistake in the tuning. I had the release speeds higher than the apply speeds, so rookie mistake. But I will say though, after switching the valve body, it engages into 4th gear much quicker and much cleaner. So I'm gonna call the valve body sort of a win, but it's a stretch. The only other couple bugs that we got to work out, number one, the power steering pump. I've got one on the shelf now because you probably heard how badly this one whines, so we'll take care of that. Cooling fans, Entropy is going to send me a couple of their larger size cooling fans that'll flow a lot more CFM, just because when we're sitting at idle in traffic for extended times, I notice the temperature just slowly creeps up. So I just think the bigger fans will help keep that temperature in check. The only other dumb mistake I made, everything that you have seen to this point driving around, the truck was way down on power because I totally spaced the fact that with this particular computer and operating system that we're using, whenever we're in speed density mode dialing in the VE tables, it's on the low octane timing table, so it had way less ignition advance than it could have at full power. So I've already made those corrections, but I think this truck is going to be a ton of fun for a fairly simple setup. And in the future, I'll show you guys like 0 to 60 times and quarter mile and all that good stuff. And don't forget, it's going to be supercharged before you know it. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. It is now Saturday. I did come in special today because it snowed last night. The parking lot hasn't been touched yet. And we've got a V8 powered all-wheel drive mini truck so you know we're gonna have some fun. So I'll show you that here, guys. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Come back soon. So yeah, that did just happen, and I just showed it to you. So lesson of the day, don't go out in the parking lot that's too small and try to do donuts on high performance summer tires, because these do not do great in ice. But yeah, this is embarrassing, but damage to the truck is, I believe just the axle shaft is bent on the end. Not even that bad of a bend. I put it up in the air. I ran everything to kind of check the run out, swap the tires side to side to confirm it was indeed an axle shaft, not a wheel. This is the wheel that was on the side. This is really all the damage there where it hit the curb. I already dismounted it, just cleaned up the inside a little bit, remounted it, rebalanced it. So an axle shaft's like $100, but I just feel so dumb. See you guys next time. I mean, in my defense, ice is kind of slippery, but I don't know who wanted this curb put there, but they clearly put it in the wrong place.